People, according to the clock here in the Selectman's office, it is now time. So welcome to the Scituate Planning Board meeting of Thursday, June 24th, 2021. And the one thing that I need to do before we start is disclose the fact that I have spoken with ethics and I have filed a disclaimer, a conflict of interest with the town clerk. I had a bit of a kerfuffle with an engineer over my property, but it will not affect how I vote or how I deal with the public, because I have always been fair. I will continue to be fair. And I made a mistake, and I'm taking care of it, and so there you have it. So much for a kerfuffle. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we now have a public hearing for National Grid. Karen, do I need to read this thing? Yes, no?
Basically, it's probably sus, but I mean,
All right, we're here for a scenic
Just
road
paraphrase.
for Maple Street and for Old Oak and Bucket Road, and I have in front of me gentlemen from National Grid.
Yes.
So these are trees, 8 trees on Maple Street and 15 trees on Old Oak and Bucket, both of which are scenic roads. So gentlemen, if you will identify yourselves and tell us what you plan to do.
My name is Ben Koval. I'm a certified arborist with National Grid's Hazard Tree Mitigation Program. The point of our program is to assess trees along feeders that are poorly performing. Trees are usually the causes of outages. We want to improve service in the area. So I basically go through and assess any trees that look like they could cause an outage within 5 years. We tag them for pruning or removal. So all of these trees, based on defects or their species or their location relative to the lines, we believe are a hazard to the tree. I've already spoken with Mike Breen and showed all of the trees to him, and he's fine with all of it. So, and this is my supervisor, Luke Fisk.
Yep. Luke Fisk, Forestry Supervisor for the Hazard Tree Program for National Grid.
Okay. All right, so we have the laundry list in front of us. Karen, do you want to make a comment on this?
no, I mean, this, I drove all the Maple Street trees, they were clearly marked, and a lot of them were decayed, et cetera. Couldn't find all the Old Oak and Bucket trees, but, Mike Breen has indicated that he has no problem with any of the trees coming down.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yes, I would recommend that, that a lot of these trees are ashes, which have that ash blight now, and maples, and a lot of them were crooked leaders, broken stuff, so I would recommend that the board approve it.
Okay. Comments from the board?
Just a question. You looked at them more than anybody, I guess, but how many of these are like a result of prior prunings that have sort of put them in this condition?
I didn't see any that looked like pruning was a factor. A lot of them are just over mature, broken leaders. When a tree gets to a certain age, it eventually, it weakens. It's easier for it to pests, diseases. Just some of them. It's just the form, the way they grew because they weren't pruned properly when they. A lot of them were planted in a poor location, like a large ash shouldn't be planted directly under the lines. So,
And the drought that we have had over the last few years.
Yep.
So that has exacerbated.
Yeah, my observation on some of these trees is they've been pruned like crazy, and they look bad, and they've been pruned to grow sideways.
Yeah.
And probably ultimately die of their own weight.
Ultimately, they should have never been planted there to begin with. It's not a great spot for a tall growing species. So it's like we had to do something to prune around it, and now it's to the point where it's just got to go in some cases.
I know, just trying to avoid every tree on a scenic way going because the power lines are there.
That's true.
Okay, anyone else? Ben?
I'm curious in your work, So for the ash trees, it says emerald ash borer susceptible. I'm just, in your work, I'm assuming you do a lot of the work on the South Shore for National Grid. What proximity to Scituate has emerald ash borer?
I believe it's been found in Cohasset in recent years.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
EAB is in Cohasset.
Yeah. So,
That's not great.
yeah, it's everywhere. It's spreading to the North Shore. It's been pretty much everywhere in Massachusetts, and we expect it to get worse. Like I said, the point of the program is to prevent outages that might occur within the next 5 years, and we
Right.
expect the emerald ash borer to spread more significantly
Yeah.
in that time period. So we're trying to do preventative maintenance,
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Well, the option to that is to put it underground, and that's never gonna happen, right? Are we gonna go under?
Unless it's paid for by someone else.
You know what? Once upon a time, a long time ago, after Hurricane Carol or Diane, it was decided to put all the utilities underground. And for a long time, on the electric bills, people were charged. And then it never happened, and that was the end of that. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? No. And this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to talk about trees? Okay. A motion? I move that the planning board vote to approve the removal by National Grid under the Hazard Tree Mitigation Program of the following trees under the Scenic Road Act in accordance with the attached list and as summarized herein, as the trees are being removed to reduce tree outage problems affecting large number of National Grid customers. Maple Street, Scenic Road, remove 8 trees. Old Oak and Bucket Road, Scenic Road, remove 15 trees. If any resident requests a tree replacement, it will be provided by the town wherever feasible. The selection and location of trees shall be determined between the tree warden, engineering supervisor, and the town planner. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just one little thing. Someday when you're out with nothing else to do, drive down the paved Bulrush Farm and notice all of the tree limbs sitting on the wires.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. They are literally sitting on the wires.
Said bulrush,
The paved Bulrush Farm,
sitting on the communication wires.
yes.
Yep, we don't maintain communication wires.
No, it's electrical. It's,
The secondary and the primary should be clear on Bulrush Farm. That was pruned in 2021, 2020? So 2020, it was
Probably the
pruned.
phone company.
it's a mess. All right, so
Thank you.
We can take a second look at it.
all right, thank you.
Guarantee it's
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
I'll send you it.
Thank you
That's
very
for
much.
5:33. All right, we have 5 minutes before our next public hearing. Joy or rapture. What else can we
Do
do?
you want to go out of order and do the Form A first,
Sure,
before the
533 Country Way?
scenic road hearing?
Sure.
Are you all ready?
All right, we're continuing the public hearing on, no, we're not. This is Form A for 533 Country Way, Assessor's Map, Block Lot 26-2-5, applicant owner Marvel Homes LLC. Paul?
From Russ Engineering Company. We submitted the A&R plan for two proposed buildable lots, lots 1 and 2 at 533 Country Way. Each lot has the required lot width of 100 feet. There is access to lot 2 over the existing driveway, and there's also now access to lot 1 to the new driveway that was installed in the last week with the permission of the Scituate DPW. These lots will be serviced by a common driveway, which we have filed with the board. which would be centered on the lot line separating lot 1 and 2. The entire site is all upland. There's a proposed septic system for the lot 2 house in this area, and the one for lot 1 is to the rear of that. This is fairly straightforward. It meets all the criteria for A&R endorsement, and I think with that, I'll end and answer any questions you may have.
Karen?
So I sent you the opinion from town council. Town council's opined that since there is an opening in the wall now in lot 1 that does provide vital access, and that, there is an agreement to remove the whole wall. So I would recommend endorsement.
Okay. Thank you. Comments from the board?
Was this the one that DPW submitted comments on?
Yes.
Right, so how do you, just out of curiosity, if you remove the wall, how do you regrade it so none of the drainage goes,
How do we?
regrade it?
Regrade it. The applicant is going to propose a wall on his property along the street line. We need that for grading, and then what that'll leave is about a 14 to 15 foot wide area for a proposed sidewalk in front of the property. If the sidewalk was, say, 5 feet wide, you'd have about a 4-foot grass strip on each side of it. It's a fairly sizable space from the edge of the pavement to the street line out there. And with the wall removed and a new wall constructed on private property, that'll afford the town a pretty wide area out there. This area.
So the wall's going back in,
Yeah, the wall's gonna go on private property. And-
but it's going back, you're gonna install a new wall?
Yeah.
Because right now it's terraced, right? I mean, it's too,
No, it actually slopes down to the top of the existing wall that's here. What they'll do is to remove the fill, and this new wall will contain the land area on lot 1 and a portion of lot 2. We also needed that for our stormwater work.
so it's gonna drain back into the lot?
Pardon? Yes.
It's gonna drain back into the lot?
No.
Stormwater.
It'll still drain out. The area from the existing wall to the street is relatively flat. I mean, it only varies by 3 or 4 tenths of a foot. There's a catch basin here. They don't have any down in this area.
I guess we'll look at it when we get it.
The common driveway's
grade
gonna
of the
be-
street won't change within the layout.
Right, but the drainage as it exists today is your baseline for whatever you're going to
The
design,
drainage pavement as it exists today will be the same when the work is done.
is the baseline.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further comment?
Can I just say I don't like side-by-side houses on a common driveway?
You can say that when they come in with common
Yeah.
driveway. Okay. All right, this is 533 Country Way. I move to close the Scenic Road Act public hearing.
No.
Nope.
It's an A&R.
A&R. Where the hell is it?
A&R.
Where is it?
Should be the next one down.
Give me the next one.
Yeah, here we go. I move to endorse, as approval not required, a plan of land in the town of Scituate, Mass., 533 Country Way, stamped by Paul J. Marabito, PLS of Ross Engineering Company, Inc., for applicant owner Marvel Homes, LLC, dated February 26, 2021, with revisions through June 15, 2021, as the division of the land, tract of land shown on the accompanying plan is not a subdivision because every lot shown on the plan has frontage of at least the distance presently required by the Scituate zoning bylaw on the public way of Country Way, and vital access is shown for each of the lots. The notes clarify that the lots are not buildable until and unless the planning board issues a permit for a common driveway. Planning board endorsement of this plan is not a determination as to the conformance with zoning regulations. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's done. Okay, now we can move on to the scenic road trees. This is a continued public hearing? Nope,
It's a new public hearing.
a new public hearing.
We re-advertised because.
Change the
of
trees.
number of trees.
Okay. Can we just paraphrase that it's a new public hearing?
Yeah, you can, I mean, the legal ad did not, did we give you the legal ad?
No. I do not.
Yeah, well, you gave us the distribution.
Is it this one?
No, I don't have it. It's fine. Doesn't matter. No. I don't, do I need to read it? We're taking out some more trees.
Right, we're taking out some more.
Take a number, Tricia.
More trees. So,
We're taking out, I mean, right from the public, the legal ad says, subject to the hearing is the removal of the following trees in the public right-of-way of Country Way. 1 10-inch maple, 1 16-inch maple tree, 2 8-inch maple clumps, and 2 2-inch saplings for a future common driveway to service 2 lots at 533 Country Way.
all right, thank you.
These are the legal ads.
All right. Paul?
Okay, thank you. The plan we submitted shows the existing edge of pavement which will remain in place. The concrete wall we talked about earlier is going to be removed in its entirety. Concrete, not stone. And the trees, Karen just mentioned, will be on the left side of the proposed common driveway. There's one on the street line, there's 2 small saplings here. There's a 8-inch clump of maples, which are wrapped around the guy wire to the telephone pole here. Those need to come out. And there's another maple here, and there's a clump of maples in this area here that will come out.
Okay. Are you planning on replacing some trees on this property?
Any trees that would be replaced would probably be made up by the landscaping of the lot. We don't have when these 2 homes are built, these lots are pretty well open right now. The existing house was in this area here, and that was raised a few weeks ago. And these 2 homes will probably have substantial landscaping around them, including shrubs and perhaps some trees. But I'm not sure what the specific plans are at this time.
Okay, well, according to a memo from Mike Breen, he's made a site visit, and he's talked with Paul Sharon and Steve Bajorklin, and he says that he has reviewed the trees indicated on the revised scenic road plan by Ross Engineering. All trees in the town layout indicated on the revised scenic road plan are okay to remove. The owner, Paul Sharon, has agreed to replace the same number of trees removed in location to be determined. So,
How many trees is that?
that's a few. All right, so just for the
Well, I would
record.
say it's 5 trees.
5
because
trees.
You're asking for 5 clumps, 5 trees or
Right.
clumps to be.
6,
removed.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Isn't it 6? 1, 1, 2, and 2?
well, some of them are saplings, so if you want to, I mean, when we get to the motion, you can change the motion. I mean,
All right, this is a public hearing. Any comment, Steve? Do you want to say anything?
No, as long as we get a commitment to replace them.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else on the board?
No, I don't think that these trees are of particular high value in
No, they're not.
the idea of a scenic road, and I think that the replacement is a gesture of good faith by the site developer, so.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing. Any comments? Would you please identify yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Tina Gavin, and my property is 526 Country Way. It's right across the street from 530. And I'm very concerned about water damage. And trees absorb a lot of water, and I understand that the wall has nothing to do with the planning board, and that the town's agreed to remove it. We've had 2 storms of rain last week and this week. And the one that we had on Tuesday, I called Mike Breen to come see it. And the portion of the wall that was removed and the brush that was there, it's a retaining wall with trees and brush holding up. And I have pictures if anybody would like to see the grade and how high it is. and how low my property is, and there's wetlands. And Mike saw that the part they removed and graded and, you know, said water wasn't gonna come out of was pouring down, running north, and going into the storm drain in front of 533 Country Way. That storm drain connects across the street to a storm drain in front of my property, and the town has an easement that runs through my property in the wetlands. So just a small section has been removed, and we now have water flowing into the storm drain and onto my property, which isn't storm water, it's runoff water from a property that never had it before with the wall and the trees. So I'm concerned with all of these trees that as they're removed, that we could have a lot of water damage. And I have severe water damage to my property already, and I'm just trying to avoid more water damage to my property.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
And I have pictures and anything if you care to see them. But Mike Green did see it and did see the water running down and into the storm drain. I've asked conservation about it because of the wetlands, and I've been told it's not their jurisdiction, but I can't for the life of me understand how it was determined it's not their jurisdiction, and that it's not within the required feet, the trees or the wall of my wetlands. So I haven't been able to get an explanation about that as well, or the fact that water's running into the storm drain now and into the property. So I'm waiting to hear from conservation on that issue as well.
Karen, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I did not talk to Mike Green after the storm. I do know he did go out in the storm. He told me he went out in the storm, but we did not discuss what he observed.
I'd have to say that was my concern when we were talking about this wall, is that the removal of the wall should not create any more water on that side of the wall than was there before.
I will say that several people told me they drove by during the storm and they did not observe water running out from the opening that was cut. Several people told me that.
Okay.
I was
But
one
we're
of
hearing
them.
otherwise
I
here?
was,
I was one of them, and
so
I,
what time did Mike Green come on, I guess, is what I would ask you, because I was there several times during that storm, and I didn't see any water.
The other day on
Yes.
Yeah,
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
and I do have a picture, it's hard to see, but I have a picture of the water.
Well, let's see it.
running down.
Could it be safe, because I
Let's see
was
it,
there, I didn't see it.
It's not perfect because I don't have. And I'm standing out in the pouring rain taking it, I'm sorry. So this is, it's hard to see, but it was running down this way, and this is the opening, so it was running down here and here into the storm drain.
but you know what, it's supposed to go into the storm drain.
No, this wall
No,
was always
that wall was
here,
all the way across.
and
Right,
nothing
okay.
ever
Yeah.
came off
All
the
right.
property.
See that?
Well, I have some more pictures that you can see the whole landscape of the wall and all
Yeah.
the trees. And nothing came off the property.
That's what I was worried about.
Okay. Please keep in mind, as we go forward with all of this, not to make an excuse for the applicant, they have to meet the criteria of not dumping any water on Countrywide.
I understand.
And that will be taken care of when they come in for their common driveway.
Mhm.
So we will ensure that there will not be any flooding. Gentlemen? Yes, Mr. Sharon?
For the record, I did swing by for.
Would you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
yes. Paul Sharon, owner and applicant at 533 Country Road. I took video of the construction entrance during multiple rainstorms, and there was not a drop of water that left the crushed stone where we cut the wall. I have video of it.
You might want to look at those.
I Are you submitting those for the record?
Yeah, you can keep them.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to have them.
Can I comment on that? On his video?
Certainly.
I'm sorry. The day the wall was being removed, trees were being cut down, or I heard chainsaws, and I went out and asked, you know, I thought there was gonna be a meeting this week, and I was yelled at and told me it was all approved, and I ended up calling Mike Green because he's the tree warden, and he went there. So I was there all day as they did their work, and Paul's video was a little while, because it was raining while they were doing the work. But later it rained all night, and it rained, you know, all day and all night and all the next day. So I'm sure he didn't have video for the amount of time, you know, that it rained, and maybe didn't necessarily see the damage that was occurring, so.
Okay. All right, but rest assured, this will be taken care of, gentlemen.
Yes.
Okay. Any further comments from the board? Karen, anything from you?
No, the tree warden recommend, has no problem with the
Right.
trees being removed.
Okay. I move to close the Scenic Road Act public hearing and approve the removal of the following trees in the public right-of-way of Country Way: one 10-inch maple, one 16-inch maple, two 8-inch maple clumps, and two 2-inch saplings for potential future access for a proposed common driveway. The common driveway must be approved by the board. The applicant will notify the town planner 48 hours before tree removal and provide pictures of the trees. This approval is contingent upon all federal, state, and local permits being obtained and is only for the tree removal. Trees shall be replaced with 5 red maples of 2.5-inch caliber minimum. Placement to be determined by DPW and the town planner. Is there a second?
Second.
Further comment?
Just a question. Karen, you were suggesting that the clump, or I forget what you called it,
I mean,
just
if you
be
think it's-
replaced by one tree?
Yeah, if you think it's 2 trees, then we'll change 5 to 6.
I'm just deferring to
I mean,
whatever you thought, so,
I mean, so I just, you know,
yep.
I'm happy to put 6 trees back.
We'll hold you to it.
Yeah. I don't want to have to drive and then have no trees all of a sudden.
Right. Okay. There's been a second. All in favor?
Second is amended, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so that's that. That's done. And now the next item, and we're right on time, is our presentation of the master plan. Emily. Hello. Good evening, nice to see you.
It is so nice to see all of you in person. So I have to say this is my first in-person presentation in almost a year. So
That's true.
I just need a moment to hook in.
Oh, green light went on. There it is.
That's great.
I think it's warming up.
Well, that makes 2 of us now.
They really will.
Yep. Okay. You're in. Okay, great. Excellent.
I just think,
Oh, man.
because the wall was there, there's only a certain amount of water going that way. That's the issue. Even if they cut it out.
We're gonna go with that. Here, I'm
I drove by right after
Apparently
the
it would be a
flood.
dispute between.
No water coming out there.
Well, she's got pictures at their work, so it's what we believe, right? But I think that's why I asked him, their baseline model is the wall
Frustrating.
exists.
Well, I would depend upon you to hold them to
Code
that.
is only, you'll go to conservation with the water.
I'm not the least bit concerned about that. All right, Emily, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Emily Ennis. I am with Ennis Associates, formerly of Harriman, and was the project manager for the...
Excuse me,
second.
excuse me, excuse me. Thank you. Sorry.
It's
Go
all right.
ahead.
I'll repeat it. So my name is Emily Ennis with Ennis Associates, formerly of Harriman. I was a project manager for the consultant team for the plan, and I'm here to make the final presentation to you. It has been a long process, somewhat interrupted obviously by COVID, but I think had a lot of public input, and I'll go through that today. So. This is what your plan looks like. So on the left-hand side is you have a document that is the master plan itself. It's accompanied by 5 appendices. The first one goes through all of the community engagement except for the final public comments, which I'll talk about in a moment. You have 3 technical appendices. So we worked with FXM Associates and HSH Associates. FXM did the market conditions study, and HSH did a technical appendix on infrastructure and transportation, both of which were, of course, key issues in the master plan. This was an interesting plan in that, first of all, it was a master plan or comprehensive plan update, so not an initial beginning one that started from scratch. You had one from 2004. You'd also done, as a town, a lot of planning during that period, and what this is a representation of 2 pages in the plan itself that shows all of those plans. Color coordinated of the type of plan it was. Some of them were plans for the entire community. Some were plans for individual portions of the community or individual topics. And one of the more interesting pieces about this planning process was at the time that we were working on this plan, the comprehensive plan, you were doing 2 other studies. One of the downtown harbor area in terms of resiliency for it, and one of the coast in terms of resiliency for it. And so while this plan, while comprehensive plan typically has a 10-year timeline, we were looking out to 2040 because there's a lot of decisions that you have to make as a community that will have impacts through that. Your timeline for the downtown harbor plan was 2050, and your timeline for the coastal plan was 2070. So as we looked at all of these plans, we tried to take those recommendations that had not yet been implemented by the town and pull them together into a holistic document. So when you get into the document, you see after this, there's a list of recommendations for each of the plans. And then we looked at the other planning processes to figure out what was being anticipated for 2050 and 2070 that needed to be started now. So that's also included in the plan. So we started with this wealth of information, knowing that there was some ongoing engagement and discussion. And then we also had a very public process. So along the bottom are the meetings with the Master Plan Advisory Committee. And along the top are the public meetings. And you see that we had our initial kickoff with the Advisory Committee. We're doing a lot of research, so January through March of 2019. And getting feedback from the advisory committee as we pull all these plans together. And then you see a cluster of meetings in August, October, and December of 2019. There should have been a January 2019 meeting, which, because the other plans were moving at a different pace, we had put off till March of last year. And that was the one that got stuck. So you see this gap. Where we were on hold while, everybody was figuring out what was going on. And then we came back, started working with the advisory committee again in August, moved into the final meeting that should have been in March, was in October, and here we are today. I will say that we released many of the questions that we would have asked in March as a questionnaire. We actually had, I think, 3 or 4 questionnaires during this period. The first one at the beginning of the process in 2019 had over 600 responses, which is amazing, frankly. All of the other questionnaires, including the last one, which I'll talk about in a minute, had about the same number of people as we would have gotten in a room. So we asked those questions in March that we'd planned to ask in person. I think we had about 30 to 40 people respond to that, which is about what we would have had in a room. So it wasn't a lost effort. We did get good information, even though we were dealing with, changed circumstances. And of course, the October meeting was a virtual meeting. Now, after that virtual meeting, which was on the topic of managing change, we put the rest of the plan together. It went through an interior review or internal review process with the Master Plan Advisory Committee, was sent out to department heads, and I want to give Karen a lot of credit because she did a great job shepherding things through and really appreciated that. Brought back, we made changes, and then we put it out mid-May for a 30-day public comment process. And Appendix E is all of the comments we received. We put the plan online, we set up a Survey Monkey that basically asks, what are your top priorities and what did you think? And so that captured all of the comments. And I will say that there weren't any surprises. I think people, which is a nice thing to get at the end of the process, right? People were concerned about many of the things that had been reflected in the public process the whole way through, particularly water infrastructure, coastal resiliency, sewer infrastructure, concerns of people who wanted more development and people who wanted less development, which had been a continuing conversation. So it was nice to see that although there are things that still need to be discussed in Scituate, that there wasn't any changes to what we'd already heard. So we have a long vision here. I'm not going to read every word of it because it is in the plan, but what I wanted to do is call out the specific pieces of the vision that I think we heard over and over again. So this vision grew initially out of the first public meeting where we asked people to do a Mad Libs exercise and pulled that together, and then we kept checking back as we heard more from people. So the idea of a financially stable town, addressing the need for economic development, affordable housing, excellent educational opportunities, expanding the sewer system, capacity of the water supply, protecting ecosystems, and the coast was certainly part of that, as well as the interior forest and wetland. And then getting down to what is Scituate in 2040, inclusive, thriving, innovative solutions for improving resilience, prosperous, and retaining its coastal identity and heritage. And these, again, were themes that we heard over and over throughout the process. So we had, in addition to the vision, there were sort of 4 very high-level goals here: improving Scituate's ecological, economic, and social resiliency, and that one really fed through to everything else. So thinking about how to address physical challenges, including environmental and infrastructure constraints, thinking about how to retain Scituate's coastal identity, especially given the challenges that the other 2 reports were bringing up in terms of climate change and sea level rise, and then improving Scituate's accessibility to all demographics for housing, jobs, and recreation. So back to the idea of a welcoming, inclusive community. And from that, we recommended a series of specific actions in the plan. But there are 3 high-level actions that I wanted to discuss that are sort of the things that we wanted you to have of, you wake up tomorrow, what do you do? And so the first one is incorporating the capital costs into your capital infrastructure budget. Now, I had a deep dive into your capital budget, which is a very good and well laid out capital budget, by the way. I was incredibly impressed. But as I looked at all of the different studies that had been done, some of them had costs associated with the recommendations and some didn't. And some of the costs were older. So there was a very good resiliency study from 2016. We know those costs will have gone up. So step 1 for some of the conversations that you will still need to have that this plan anticipates between now and 2040 beyond, you need those costs into a plan so you can start to see what the trade-offs were. And there was more work that we would have liked to have done on the trade-offs, but getting all of those costs is always going to be outside the scope of a comprehensive plan. So bringing those in, and especially the coastal resiliency, the water system, and the sanitary sewer system, which were the 3 areas we had the most questions about in terms of costs. The second immediate action is starting to think about land use. And again, this community is well ahead of many others in terms of thinking about that. There is a problem in that, for example, some of the land use things that you've been thinking about, like this zoning for North Scituate, additional development in North Scituate is dependent on those infrastructure components, and that's why infrastructure came before dealing with land use. So, but thinking about the rezoning for North Scituate and the timing of that, and then midterm actions in terms of updating zoning for the harbor and downtown that came out of some of the planning processes we talked about, and also thinking about how to preserve important ecological assets that will help mitigate some of the negative impacts of climate change. And again, that brings us back to the balance of development and preservation. And so these land use recommendations, these regulatory, and they're more specific than the plan itself, this is just a very high level piece, starts to talk about issues of affordability in terms of housing. Something that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic is anticipated shifts in employment. I think there are real opportunities for Scituate if people do work from home a few days a week and commute a few days a week, and we're seeing that's a pattern that people are very much talking about. And so thinking about what that happens, and then again, this is looking to 2040 and anticipating longer term planning, thinking about what happens to land use as you start to see the impacts of climate change and sea level rise. And there's recommendations in the plan about that. And then finally, in your top 3 actions, it's really continuing the community conversations. So in addition, obviously, to the master plan having its public process, the coastal resiliency and the downtown harbor plan also had their public processes. Looking forward, setting up a regular check-in with people on many of these issues would be a huge component to helping to implement this master plan. And it is developing that consensus for collective action, and the plan goes into more detail about why that is critical in terms of the different choices you're facing over the next 10 to 15 years. And then 2 other pieces in the plan in terms of implementation. One is you have a lot of recommended actions, around a lot of different planning studies. And again, we called those out. Some of those may be in conflict with each other in terms of time, resources, whether it's volunteer like yourselves or staff, in terms of money available, whether it's the capital or the operating budget. Some of them work well in terms of prioritization, i.e. these actions should come before those actions. So what we've done is prepared a criteria for evaluating all of those actions and starting to put them in as you get the numbers in, let's say how much some of them cost, how do you prioritize which ones come first? Or if you have opposing actions where you can do either A or B, there's a lot of your coastal resiliency work that has different choices. These are ways that you can think about and use as a framework for evaluating those over time. And then finally, a master plan, a comprehensive plan, has certain elements that are required by the state's enabling legislation, Section 81D of Chapter 41. We've added some more. So obviously climate change and ecology, natural resources is assumed in there, but less specific to the ecology, breaking out water and sanitary infrastructure from overall services and facilities. So we developed that list originally from the enabling legislation, brought in those components that were most important to Scituate, and then started looking, this is a plan that is about resiliency, at the different elements of resiliency that each addresses. From this, there's a section that flows into specific recommendations that address resiliency for each of these issues. So in addition to the sort of ground level, boots on the ground of some of the plans that you already had in place, this is the higher level strategy recommendations for each of those. And with that, I'm happy to talk more about the plan, answer any questions you may have. But I will say it has been a real pleasure working with this community over, I'm sorry it was a little bit more elongated than we'd anticipated, but it's been a real pleasure working with the community over this period.
First, I'd just like to comment that I think Emily's done a really good job under very challenging circumstances. I think probably this is unprecedented in the work that you do, and probably for a long time to come, with the challenges logistically that we had to go through trying to kind of get this to the table today. And then also it was, I would say it was a challenge in terms of the synthesizing, like Emily brought up, we as a town have done a good amount of planning and is pretty complex trying to synthesize all that information in one overarching document. So I think that we should be proud of kind of what we have here, and that it's a job well done, despite the challenges that we had to go through, which was, as you saw, it got pretty dragged out for a while. We're here, so.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for
Yes.
all of your help and support. It was a challenge for sure.
Great team, so-
We ended up with, a pretty amazing sort of comprehensive coalition of different plans together. I still think there's a lot of conflict in the different sets of recommendations, and I think that's going to be, from the town's perspective, our challenge is to figure out what we integrate and what we don't. Some of the notions of building causeways along, all of the coastline is, I think, probably economically unfeasible for us and those kinds of things. So we're going to have to get a little more real about it at some point, but it's a good place to start to frame, the discussion. So I think it was very well done. It took a lot of work, I know.
Well, the comments that I received from the advisory committee, from the department heads that looked at it, were extremely helpful. And I had a good team that I was working with too, so I'll pass that on. But the cost, as you bring up, that is a key piece of information that will help clarify, I think, some of the decision making, and that's one of the reasons we put that recommendation in there.
I'll go as far as to rule out certain things.
So I think that could also be the truth.
People still insist on living on a barrier beach. And, a day like today is absolutely stunning. But when you have, the strawberry moon high tide and a storm off the coast, it can be a little disconcerting. So it's, many of these houses, I think, are monuments to insurance. And that is, I think, a real...
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is a real issue, that people have been allowed to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. There's one house down on Oceanside that has been redone 11 times. And so there reaches a point that, how do we deal with that for the future? Because it's risking first responders, it's risking everything on the altar of, oh, isn't it pretty in the summertime? And these all used to be cottages that, you'd show up in April or May, sweep out the sand, and enjoy it for the summer, and then you went back to wherever. But not anymore. They're full-time, year-round houses, and they keep getting bigger and bigger. So then we end up in the issue of, how do we continue to pay for this? How do we continue to keep the infrastructure going and open and available? And how do we deal with the insurance and FEMA and flooding, et cetera, et cetera? Bill Golden had a piece in the Globe recently, and they were talking about putting up barriers. It's very strange. But then, somebody cited Amsterdam and what they have done, and they don't have flood insurance. But they have discovered that so much of their infrastructure is now falling apart.
Yes.
20 years.
Yes, and this is what's happening here as well. The infrastructure, for whatever reason, has not been maintained. And it's like, putting in a septic system in your house. It costs a lot of money, and you can't see it. And that's a really difficult thing.
We had as a team several conversations about the infrastructure because, the part of the criteria is this idea of, where do you put money in to repair? Where do you put it in new if you know that it's, take a house, right? You've got a 30-year mortgage, but in 20 years it's going to be underwater. How do you think about that? One of the conversations I remember having with HSH is, I said, what happens if you know, a community chooses to abandon infrastructure? I'm assuming you can't just, you know, let the road go. And he said, oh, no, 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 you've got to cap this and cap that and monitor this and that. So thinking about the life cycle of investments is going to be really important. It's not just a matter of, okay, we can add this road and the sewer and the water and the electricity and the cable all underneath it. It's what happens if or when we have to abandon that, and what's the long-term costs of that. So I think you're getting to a part of the conversation that really is someplace that Scituate is actually in advance of many communities because you were doing this work already. You've at least started, you haven't got the answers yet because I don't think anybody does or very few do, but you've at least started asking those questions, and that's not something that every community has done at this point. We did make some recommendations for strategies of how you could think about new development and how you could think about setting up funds to buy properties back and then, you know, potentially let those property, you know, those properties would no longer be built on, for example. So there's recommendations like that in there. But again, you're back to costs. You know, that will cost money to do that. And what are the other options? Banks and insurance companies have a huge role to play in these decisions, to your point.
They sure do.
Huge role to play in this.
And it's, they keep funding and funding and funding to the point of, you know, where does it all end? And we all, the rest of us, end up paying for it.
And it's important to recognize that the solution is not on the shoulders of the town alone. I mean, this is a conversation that has to happen across multiple jurisdictions. So state and federal, as well as the private insurance and banking markets.
So hopefully, do we see some of this federal infrastructure money trickle down to us?
And there's quite a bit
Well,
of it.
I think you shouldn't bank on that.
No, I know, I'm not
because
going
the
to,
issue
absolutely
is
not,
the
yeah.
coast is very long.
I
And
know.
if it's federal money,
Yeah.
everybody's going to want a piece of it, right? And so to the extent that
Yeah.
we think now we could get it, but, you know, as this pressure comes from sea level rise and climate change, more and more pressure is going to be
Oh, absolutely, I guess
put on
it's,
the federal government because none of these communities have the capacity to really
And look-
fund these kinds of massive sort of reinforcement kind of things.
But look what's happened in Louisiana recently, 15 inches of rain. And on the heels of other rain. And these people don't have insurance. They don't have whatever it needs. It's nationwide.
Your 15 inches of rain is a good segue to, it's not just your coast that you have to think about. It's the wetlands and the forests. You know, we've seen the forest fires in California. You know, forest fires can happen anywhere. You were talking about rain earlier in the conversation. With increased precipitation events, you're likely to have more problems with that. One of the things that's in your plan that we kind of pushed on doing, it's not something I've really seen done before, so I'd be interested if somebody has, I'd like to know. But we looked at this idea of wetland mitigation and how that might impact your land use, because my team and I were really interested in what that might do. And that is something to consider as you're considering new proposals coming in front of you. You know, as a planning board and as a community, if there are wetlands on the property, understanding where those might migrate to, or understanding that that's even a possibility, they may grow or shrink depending on the climatic change, I think will be important in your decision making as to where new development can or can't go.
And those marshes are shrinking.
Yes.
They are shrinking. And it's not
I
necessarily.
think you're really talking about, in some sense, growth of wetlands
The
because
inland
of
growth versus the
additional rain.
shoreline marshes.
Yeah, not
Yes,
shoreline,
absolutely.
not saltwater marshes, but
Yeah.
freshwater. Yeah.
Exactly, because those act as the sponges. So if you get more precipitation, I agree, the marshes where the sea is coming up, those will shrink, but the inland wetlands are a potential issue. So,
I'm getting
Can I
more
ask you,
wetter.
what did you use as your base case for sea level rise over what time horizon?
we actually took I think it was the NOAA, and we looked at multiple scenarios. We didn't choose just one, just because, as you know, we're all making predictions at this point. So we looked at the 1, 3, and 5 primarily. I think we looked at the 10, but it was The 10 was further out from our timeline, and we knew the coastal resiliency team was working on that, so.
Because NOAA's base case for sea level rise over the next century is 0.94 inches in this location. So I know, like, you looked at the 1, 3, and 5 and 10 foot on that on the tool that they have online.
Right.
But those are so many standard deviations away from most probable that it doesn't. I mean, it's infinitesimally likely.
Yeah, it's the difference between a comprehensive master plan versus a specific resiliency plan is that we if you think of the comprehensive plan as you're in the airplane rather, looking down, and we're sort of trying to identify the issues and how they relate to each other, and then it's those specific coastal plans that really delve into the nitty-gritty. So our job was really what's at risk, and how could that be dealt with, and then understanding that there were other planning teams that were looking at okay, this is the thing that's really likely to happen when. So it's the difference in that level. But yes, as you say, there are a number
Sorry,
of...
no, 0.94 inches, 0.94 feet.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
I didn't want to call you out on television.
So less than a foot over the next century. And
Yeah.
And that's for constant inundation. That means, okay,
Right.
everything is underwater constantly. Whereas you can get with severe storms, you can
Exactly.
get transient 3 and 5 foot changes, which would then bring up the repetitive loss scenarios that we
Yes.
see with these houses, on
It's not like we have severe storms here or anything.
Oh,
No, but we do,
Very
but it's not like, half of Scituate is going to become the lost city of Atlantis.
No, the good news is we'll still have coast, right? We
Right.
just don't know where it's gonna be.
It'll be at town hall before we're done.
Beachfront property.
Yeah, see, park out.
And the other thing is, how much higher do we make these houses on stilts? I mean, you need an elevator to get up to some of them.
You got to see some of them down in like the Mississippi Delta.
Yeah.
They're crazy. They're
Yeah.
20 feet up high, or Galveston, Texas. Like it happens.
At the beach, so there, yeah.
It looks funny, but
But your point to the difference of what's the sort of day-to-day inundation, the sea level rise, plus the storm surge becomes the interesting one. And that's where the multiple foot scenario gives you an idea of where the storm surge might go. So,
That's really what you have to plan for, though. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't it's not just sea level rise, it's what happens in those typical but severe events, right?
But you know what? It's been happening forever. I mean, it has.
Well, I think it's happening more frequently, I think,
But
is what we're
it's
seeing.
still-
I mean, it's happened forever, but we
Right.
seem to have much more frequency. And I think what happens is as we overdevelop our coast, or anybody does, there's no place to go except
Right.
in our basements. I mean, that's kind of where that stands. What I got out of this was our zoning really has to be toughened up a lot. That's no doubt about that. That's a huge issue for zoning. And to get back to my first point, Steve, about the federal thing is, I'm not looking to have every single pipe in the street, but man, we'd like some help with our wastewater treatment plant. Would be nice too, if we could just get
Yeah,
that.
well, we may have to move that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
teeny tiny little piece of, if you could have a big question, what would you like? We're gonna give you X amount of dollars, what would you like? Well, can I have a wastewater treatment plant? They might look at us like, we're crazy, we're gonna give you everything. But that's what,
yes.
when you talk to people here, that's what is really, really concerning and disconcerting to people about what is happening. Now, I know for a fact last night that the bridge to First Cliff was washed out in the high tide. So that's when we look about zoning or whatnot. It's really real things that we really see every single day. I mean, we know Cole Parkway was washed out last night. We know. I saw that. So, like I said, I think it happens all the time, but much more frequently now with climate change for us.
Water, sewer, coastal resiliency is what we heard in the comments over and over again consistently. And then there are plenty of other things, housing and economic development, all that, but those three were always at the top.
And I don't live anywhere near the coast, and that's all we talk about on the other side of 3A is the water. All those people are coming here is what we say. They're all coming across the Great Divide to come live in the West End. But what we, so it isn't, I think people think of Scituate, they think of just coastal, but I live where there's a lot of open space. And we're getting wetter and wetter all the time up in the West End. We're getting
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons we looked at that, is because everybody had been looking at the coast. And we wanted the comprehensive plan to at least address the fact that you have a lot of interior forest, you have a lot of interior wetlands. Those are also at risk. Not to get too depressing in one evening, but it's not just the number of precipitation days or the amount of precipitation days or the amount of warming days. It's what it does to the flora and fauna. So you have more insects coming up and what they do to the native tree species. We looked at the fact that the predominant forest is likely to shift over time, but it's not like the trees that are there now just disappear and the new ones come in. So, dead trees, wildfire, et cetera. So we wanted to at least address the fact that there are going to be these other impacts, so that they're on people's radar. So, and they can think about them in terms of balancing that development and preservation.
Well, as far as water is concerned, many people feel that as long as the water comes out of the faucet, we're fine. And that is not the case.
It goes back to your hidden infrastructure, that you mentioned earlier.
It's not the case.
Yes.
Nope.
And, we just, last night or Tuesday night, they approved a 9% increase in our water usage, which people are going to complain about. Well, we have to pay for this stuff somewhere. We truly are paying for the sins of our fathers who didn't do things for a long time.
Right.
And
40
it is
years of
right
neglect.
now that we are really going to have to pay for that. And 9% is a lot. I mean, my house is a very low floor. There's 2 older people there. We're pretty lucky. But, at some point, you really just have to bite the bullet and pay for it, or you're going to be left with nothing. I mean, that's almost an either-or situation at some point.
And we have very low water rates compared to other communities.
Yeah.
And,
Late 1940s water. Right.
Right.
We really do.
Really?
Yeah.
We do, and as opposed to the MWRA, which is ridiculously high. So,
Yeah, but they're providing water to 3 million people.
Yeah.
I understand that, but they're
All
still
the way
very,
out from western
from,
Massachusetts.
yes,
A little
from
different there.
Quabbin.
I mean, a little different kind of infrastructure there.
Yeah,
But
that's
still
it.
in all, their water rates are very high,
No.
so.
I do want to call attention to just some of the other recommendations and concerns people had. Sidewalks was a big issue. We talked about that, I remember, especially on 3A. Connect a lot, and I think some of this comes out of people's experience during the pandemic, but a lot of desire for community. So the open spaces, the sidewalks that connect to them, people were very interested in what would happen in the villages. Some concern about, obviously what happens to the downtown harbor area over time and where that could go. But there was, a desire to see, as with any community, there are people who like their community exactly the way it is, and that's fine. That's, it's good to know that people like that. And there are also people who wanted sort of more change, and I think that's going to be another balance that you have.
It's a
over the
balance.
next-
But now we have sidewalks, there's a new sidewalk going in on Country Way.
Yes.
We got money for that. And so that will connect North Scituate to Greenbush, to the harbor, and then, and you can even walk all the way out to Minot. And once upon a time, there was someone around town who said, oh, you don't want to spend your money on that, no one will use it. There are people on it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's that old, if you build it, they'll come.
Yes, absolutely.
And they do. And they're there. It's great recreation. Lots of people walking, and that's as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. The sidewalks were a huge issue, so, and that connectivity, and bicycle as well.
Yeah.
So,
Although I'd like to keep the bicycles off the sidewalks.
But then you have to build them
You
in
have to have a bike.
General bylaw.
to expand the road and put a bike lane in.
Yeah, really. But at any
I
rate,
think the challenge is here, and I mean, I guess from my perspective, I don't have any other comments on the master plan. I think it's well done and it's something we should endorse. The challenge I see going forward is that it's, how do we operationalize
right.
recommendations in a way that we're thinking about them, recognizing them, even though they may be 5 or 10 years down the road, right? And I think that's the bigger challenge here, because otherwise it's just going to be another, paperweight on a shelf somewhere. So from a planning board's perspective, I think our challenge is to figure out, are there elements of this we can sort of operationalize and put into sort of policy discussions as we get into individual approvals too.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that since, being involved with this project in two ways. I think that, we as a board have to discuss and think about two things that rose to the top for me for how we might approach implementation and everything is, one is really, and it's not just us, it behooves all of the boards and committees in town, is to try to do a better job with our liaison work. And since the master plan is our plan, where the planning board is almost like trying to communicate that, hey, this is in your wheelhouse, let's work together to work on this, and that would be the board of selectmen, that would be Concom, that would be, the water and sewer, all of those other stakeholders, and but we kind of push on them when it's kind of something that they should be taking charge of, but with us. That was one thing, and then the other thing that I was thinking of is something that might dovetail nicely into all of this would be to use this new master plan to inform a zoning study or a full rewrite of the zoning bylaw, because who knows, I don't know when that was done. I mean, it's been iterated over the years.
It was
but
done, Mike Donahue did it back in 1994, 95.
It's a long time.
It's been a long time. It's been a very.
Yeah, I think we've done.
Well, there's new information here that should feed into it. I think that's the key.
And I think we've done a good job as a board, not just since I've been on it, but like making, like I said, iterative changes, or adding things, or making, deletions or substitutions. But I think it might be time to kind of do the same process for the whole zoning bylaw. It's another thing for us to think about. I know we already have a lot on our plates.
But we also.
I think it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We also have to not work at cross purposes with different boards. And the bottom line to all of it is communication, or the lack thereof. And oftentimes we're in silos, and nobody talks to anybody, and all of a sudden it all hits the fan. And how did that happen? Well, it did.
Well, I think that's true. Communication is important. But I think what Ben's talking about is institutionalization of some of these processes, and the only way to do that is to actually change the zoning bylaws or change your regulations to say we've got to consider these things when we're doing something.
And we're going to do that in terms of lot size.
I think that's what's going to have more of a lasting impact.
Yes. But that's coming, isn't it, Karen? Lot size.
Lot shape is
Lot
coming
shape,
late.
yes.
I mean, we
Yeah, I
are,
wasn't talking about that in particular.
we are
But
working
it's-
on lot shape, but I mean, we do have to figure out then how the planning board wants to communicate with other people, with other departments, to try to have the master plan be front and center so that you can implement what you want to implement. I mean, I do know the Director of Planning and Development is working to get some type of list together of all the recommendations from all the plans. And I have made certain that the master plan will be included. I mean, it seems like he should have an involvement in trying to unify some of the stuff throughout some of the departments in town.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
I would think that that's a role that he should have, like, we almost need an advocate for planning.
Well, that's what he's
Maybe
supposed to
Is
be.
that what he is? Yeah.
Theoretically.
I mean, so at some point, do you want to ask him to come to one of your meetings? And
Yes.
These are things that we have to start thinking about for how you want to proceed and move forward, and what your immediate priorities are, and what your maybe 1 and 2 year priorities are, because, you can't do it all at once. I mean, and we're still working on issues that we're behind on.
Right.
So I'm just saying we need to have a discussion about those.
The
Yeah,
other,
I would do it as a discussion about priorities, right, on what we want to focus on.
one of the.
Because we could get buried in the weeds on some
Yeah, we
of,
don't
some of
want
these
to.
smaller issues, and we have.
So we can put a priorities discussion
And we can
on
back
your
up and
next-
say-
on your next meeting, if that's
Yeah, I would be happy to do that.
If that's what you would like. I mean, I believe right now, on July 8th, we don't have anything. I mean,
I
who
would
knows
say-
what is gonna come in between, you know, like a Form A or something.
Yeah.
But we could devote a whole meeting to priorities. I gave you some information on lot shape today. I mean, we're gonna start to discuss that because you have indicated that that is one of your high priorities in getting that, hopefully, zoning for a fall town meeting. I'm still working on stormwater. But I'd like to talk about, we can talk about that, you know, when we have a priorities discussion.
I would suggest that if we do that, that prior to that, we sort of try to put a list together of, you know, what are the things we should be discussing about, where are the next steps we're going to go here. And I can take a cut at it if you like,
I mean,
but
if everybody wants to try to take a cut at what's important to them
Right.
for their next steps, then we can synthesize it for the July 8th meeting and have some type of, you know, quality discussion on what you wanna.
yeah, I
where
just
we
think it
wanna
needs to
go.
be a stalking horse for discussion, right?
Right.
That's all.
That's the three
So we
things I
don't go
sent you.
into it
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I
without
sent,
anything.
the last meeting, Ann said there are three things that you wanted, and I gave her and Karen, three things that I would like to see discussed openly with the board, which all involve zoning, so.
Right. The other thing is I have spoken to, I did it last year, and because of the pandemic, it didn't happen. I am working really hard to try and get a sit-down with the Board of Selectmen and hopefully the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that we can talk about some of our mutual issues, because one interplays with the other. So we'll see what happens. I understand that at the, what do they call it, a retreat that the selectmen are going to do in August, that this will be one of their items to talk to the planning board. Well, we can only hope. We can only hope. But we have to. We have to. We have to talk to them, and we have to talk to the zoning board of appeals, because a lot of what happens is, and everyone thinks that it's the planning board that's building all of this stuff, and it really isn't us. It really isn't. We do not approve water. We do not approve sewer hookups. We do not approve 40Bs. We don't do that. We don't.
approve all that zoning stuff that makes
No.
houses go sky high.
Right. That's not us. It isn't us, but we get it in the neck every time.
You're talking to the choir. I used to be a planning board member.
And you know exactly what I am talking about.
Grocery store conversations when I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
I would just run in and grab
Right.
something, yes.
Uh-huh. Well, why did you let this happen? No. That's not it at all. Not at all. And it's just, we're planners. We need to plan about the future, and that's what all of this is about.
Great.
Definitely.
You did an incredible job, Emily.
you.
Thank
And
you.
you were really a lot of fun to work with.
Well, as I said, I really enjoyed working with all of the members of the advisory committee, with yourselves, Karen, of course, and the community. The community was great. We had some excellent discussions at those meetings. So, and I will
Great.
pass the compliments back to the team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next step, all right, the next step is that the board needs to decide if you would like to have a motion to endorse and approve the master plan and bring it to town meeting for endorsement. And do I have to send it to the state or anything?
No.
Okay.
Just local.
Yes, but, so you have to decide if you want to endorse it and bring it to town meeting. You're not required to bring it for town meeting, but it does carry some weight if you have an approved master plan by the town.
Well, I think we should, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but all of the work that's gone into it, I would like to think that the board could approve it, bring it to the selectmen, and get it on town meeting floor to,
I think, you know, otherwise it's not gonna hold any weight. So
Right.
I think it has to be, first of all, I'm prepared to approve it tonight for the
Right.
planning board. But I think it has to go to town meeting, and it has to be presented for everybody to hear.
Do you want to take any public comment at all?
I was about to say that. We do have a few public people here. Does anybody have anything that they would like to say? Would love to hear from you. It-
Becky Mellon at Elevate 100 Pratt Road. I just had a question about population projections. I originally reviewed a draft in April, and at the time we didn't, Appendix B wasn't available to me, so I quickly reviewed it, the most recent draft online. I'm just kind of curious how those projections were made. I'm looking at, I also chair the Water Resources Commission, so looking at the projected water use in 2040, really is only out of 1,500 or so residents. So, you know, yes, if you could just talk a little bit about how you got those numbers.
So I'll do my best. We use actually two sets of projections because one of the planning studies was using MAPC, because they were MAPC projections, and then our own consultant from FXM Associates had come up with their projections working with UMass Donahue. And the interesting thing about them is that they weren't the same. So it's just, you know, so we chose to put them both in there. Appendix B should be available now.
Yeah.
So you can see how FXM Associates did their projections. I'm happy to put you in touch with them if you have more detailed questions. And then MAPC, obviously, which is the Regional Planning Association. I'm sure be happy to talk to you about their projections as well. So I'm not giving you a full answer because I didn't do the projections myself, but I can put you in touch with people who did.
And I guess my only kind of concern is that looking at the previous master plan, the projections were so off.
Yes.
And, you know, this seems low based on just the number of projects that are being built now and potentially in hopper. So, you know, the theoretical modeling versus the actual what's happening on the ground. And I didn't get that from the FXM liaison and MXB that they're looked at. And I imagine there was a provision of what's kind of happening in town. Like where our population is looking, looks like it will go the next couple of years just based on what's being built. You know, some of that is almost half of what's projected in increased water use by 2040. So, do you know if they use model versus actual kind of projects?
I don't know the answer to that. I know we gave them the projects we had available to us, so I'm sure they looked at that. And the two groups, FXM Associates, a member of my team, and MAPC, had a sit-down conversation to discuss the projections to make sure we were all aligned, but we wanted to make sure that we included both because we knew that it had been an issue in the past. So.
And then I didn't see it in the, again, I didn't dig deep enough into that, I don't have time for NXT, but is there a statement, is there a choice of which projection we're choosing to go with in terms of planning for the town? Or is it just kind of these are the numbers?
I think it was more, these are the numbers. One of the problems that we have, and the same was true of the build-out analysis that we did, which we did two different ways, is because so much of what can happen is dependent on sewer expansion or water expansion. If it happens, then it goes this way. If it doesn't happen, then it goes that way. Then it didn't seem fair to say, this is going to be the precise number, because there are questions that are up in the air.
So the lower number being if the expansion doesn't happen.
That would be my assumption, yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else that would care to comment? Okay. Emily, thank you so much for an incredible job and a job well done.
Should we do a motion?
All right, do we have a motion?
You might want to do something like move to endorse and approve the master plan and bring it to town meeting for endorsement.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Do we
Thank
have
you.
to present this to the selectmen? Or can we just do it on our own?
You don't have to present it to the selectmen. I mean, we can present it to the selectmen. If you do that, I would like you to try to think about a timing when you want to do it.
Okay.
You know, as we start getting into this, it's already summer, and then town meeting, special town meeting, I don't know if they've set the date. Well, that'll come up pretty quickly.
I know.
And we have other things that we're trying to work on. I mean, perhaps we could see if we could get some type of meeting this summer
Okay, we'll
and
work on that.
talk about the master plan, perhaps invite them to our meeting.
Yes, it would be nice if they came to visit us.
All right.
All right.
He's the liaison.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, let's see, our next item is an A&R on Bayberry Road. Is anybody here for that? Okay, well, that's not until 8. And then we also, what else do we have? Discussion, surety release, Cushing Road, common driveway. Karen, do we want to talk about that or put it off? No?
It's up to the board. I mean, I would expect the consultant coming in for the Form A, so if you want to switch things around,
Okay,
then go ahead, yeah.
all right. All right, Stephen, this is you. You want to come up and make your presentation?
For the record, I'm Steve Bjorkman, one of the partners in Diamond Development. Some of you guys I haven't been in front of, and a lot of you I have. Back in 2009, Diamond Development got approved a special permit for a common driveway off of Nealgate Street and up near the Judge Cushing tomb. There's a small private road that actually is owned by the state of Massachusetts. That originally, I think, was there before Route 3A, so it's a very old road. Part of what we did when we put the common driveway in was we ran a new water service up with a hydrant up to the driveway that we were installing, which is about halfway up the road. The whole road, I guess, is maybe 1,000 feet long or something like that. It goes up to a cul-de-sac. I don't know if any of you have been up there or not. And one of the conditions that was put on us, because we dug part of the roadway up to put the water in, was, if you saw the special permit, we have a condition number 8, which says, prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall provide the planning board with a $10,000 bond, which shall be released upon repaving of Cushing Road, satisfactory to the town and the Commonwealth of Mass. After the DPW has inspected the site and found cleanup to be complete, these funds shall be returned to the applicant with interest, if any is due. So that's the condition that was put on. In my opinion, it's a two-way condition. We do what we're supposed to do. Hopefully the planning board will do what they're supposed to do. We waited. Instead of just patching the roadway, some of you have been around for a long time know that originally we started dealing with the state to try to get this road completely fixed, and the state and the town worked together with it. Finally, the state ponied up and pulverized the entire road, put down 4 inches of asphalt on the whole thing, and it came out beautiful for a private road. So we waited to put our top coat on our driveway until the state finished the road, so it would all be done kind of at the same time. So we went in, I think, a couple weeks after the state finished, and we put the top coat on the road, on our driveway after they did the road, and provided the as-built plans to Karen. She's got those in the folder as well. And I went to DPW, and DPW on June 1st gave us a memorandum. I don't know if that was just given to you or not, but
They had it previously.
okay. Yeah, well, in a nutshell, the last of it says that they were out there while the road was being done. It was negotiated between the town and the state. They paved the road. The last sentence, the department has reviewed the current condition of the roadway and takes no exception to the work. So that means the paving was done. Then we've got another memo, and I guess what's happened in the meantime, somebody has now decided that they want to try and make this a public road and put it up for street acceptance, which has nothing to do with Diamond Development whatsoever. But a memo came in, and I can understand there may be some confusion here, but at the end of this, it says that while it was repaved, the engineering department sent you an update of the completion of the work. It's important to note that the current state of the road does not qualify for street acceptance. We know that. It never did. I don't know if it's going to ever be accepted as a town way. They negotiated with the neighbors that were up there, not our people, but the people that live on the street. There's, I think, 6 other residents up there, and they have a huge tree in the middle of the road that they didn't want to take out. So for one reason or another, the town agreed with them and paved around the tree, nothing to do with Diamond Development. And Kevin's letter now says if somebody's going to go for street acceptance, that the tree should probably be removed, there should be some drainage improvements done, there should be street acceptance plans done. Again, none of this has anything to do with our condition number 8, and the last sentence says, therefore, I strongly suggest that any funds that are in escrow should be retained until such time as this is sorted out. There's some confusion, and some of it may be on DPW's part, that you put surety up when you're going to build a road. If we come to you guys, get a road approved, we post surety. If the state builds a road, the planning board's not involved. There is no surety. So this last letter makes it appear as though, hey, we should keep whatever surety we have to finish this roadway and bring it up to standards. According to Kevin, and I met with Kevin, he was not given a copy of our special permit with condition number 8 in it, but he has read it now with me, because I sat in his office and went over it, and he said, my letter has nothing to do with Diamond Development. I was just asked what would be done if somebody wanted to have the road accepted. So I'm hoping that we're not lost in this confusion, but we've basically waited since 2009 to try to get our $10,000 back. So now we've completed all of our work and all of our conditions in the common driveway permit. Whatever happens as far as the town accepting the road is way beyond what we did for this condition, and I hope the planning board understands that and votes to release our $10,000.
Karen?
Special permit was provided to the director of DPW and the town administrator in plenty of time for this meeting tonight and previously. So it was provided. The board has to decide if these memos say that the repaving is satisfactory to the town. That's what the board has to decide. And if the repaving is satisfactory to the town, then the surety should be returned.
Well, we have competing memos.
Well, actually, in both memos, in the first memo, it says the department has reviewed the current condition of the roadway and takes no exception to the work. That to me means that the paving is okay. The second one starts out by saying comments. DCR has completed the paving of Cushing Hill Road. And that was under the direction of DPW. So between them, I can't imagine having DPW out there and watching it and saying we disagree that the pavement is not okay. So they basically say the same thing, that the paving is okay. It's just somebody may have to do drainage improvements if they want to make this a public way. Again, our condition 8's got nothing to do with bringing that thing up to street standards. That's a whole different ballgame.
I hope you understand that other than holding the surety of $10,000, that's the only aspect of this that involves the planning board and/or the town planner. This is something with DPW and the town administrator.
Yep.
So it has nothing to do with the town planner, and it has nothing to do with the planning board.
I'm not saying that the planning board or anybody involved there is asking to have this become a public road, because I don't know why they would. Normally, whoever builds the road goes forward to try to have something become a public road. That's the state.
But this is a kerfuffle between DPW and you.
I don't have a problem with DPW.
Okay.
I just,
So,
my
all right.
issue is we gave the planning board $10,000 to make sure it was paved. It's been paved.
All right.
So
I'll open this up to the board for comment.
I'm not that familiar with this project, so it sounds like you did some trench work, you put in a fire hydrant. Okay, so when I read the special permit, there's also some issues about some historic stone posts and stockpiling fill against bases of trees on it. So I had no idea about this. It's way
No, that's all done. That's all been taken care of. Somebody stole the Judge Cushing sign. We actually were able to find it, a big brass plate. And I think if I remember right, it was a Boy Scout that ended up with it, and we found out through a neighbor. So we had the stone posts out front rebuilt as part of the project, and we put the plate back on again. So we completed everything we were supposed to do in this project.
Right. So my only question, just for clarification, is so there was some moderate or medium level site work that happened with that, but in terms of the actual roadway, existing roadway layout and characteristics like grades and all that,
Yep.
were there any substantive changes that were made to that
No.
as part of your work?
No, all we did was we just ran a water line up and put a hydrant up for all the residents up there halfway up the road.
Right, so in terms of your obligation, like when the DPW talks about these things for the public way acceptance and everything, and they mentioned drainage, that was it totally outside of the purview of your work at the time?
There was no discussion whatsoever about making this a public road when we came in.
I understand that, but even in terms of drainage improvements or anything, like your only obligation was repave
Yep.
to the existing grade and layout of the road,
Yep.
nothing else.
Yeah. We were gonna add a 3/4 inch top coat on the roadway.
Right.
And again, the roadway was in such poor condition before this ever started, that we tried to explain to everybody that we'll put that surety up, but if we put just that 3/4 inch coat down, it's just gonna come apart again. So for years, the state and the town went back and forth on who owns the road, whose responsibility is this. Ultimately, and we told them in the beginning, it's a state road, okay? The state doesn't want it, that's the problem. They want to give the road away, they want the town to take the road over, but that doesn't have anything to do with us. That's between them and DPW and the town meeting. Town meeting can vote not to accept it if they don't want to accept it. And again, I was told by DPW, if the town doesn't accept it, they'll probably continue to plow it anyways, because there's now 9 residents up there. So, and again, just for the record, Karen, I did talk to Kevin, and again, I'm not saying that you didn't give it to him, but Kevin told me that he had not seen this, and that was just the other day.
Well,
However that happens,
no,
it doesn't
we're not-
matter.
we're not gonna go down that
It doesn't
road.
matter
No,
how
you're
it
right.
happened. Right.
Doesn't
What-
matter.
What matters is Diamond Development has completed everything we're supposed to with this application, and it's been 12 years now. We'd
All
like to
right,
get our surety
Steve,
back.
We know.
That's it.
Let's not get redundant. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
I have a question for
Yes.
Karen. Other than this memo, have they completed everything they're supposed to in the special permit, do you think?
I haven't analyzed everything extensively. I have, my understanding, this was before my time as well.
Oh, okay.
So this was, my understanding is that, the road was just repaved the road was just paved. DCR basically showed up one day and paved the road. DPW was out there. They've been arguing over it for a couple of years over paving and street acceptance, et cetera. I asked to get copies, which Mr. Bjorklund provided, of the as-built. I just got that on June 3rd, and I actually got all the recorded stuff when I asked for it this spring. Prior to that, it was not in the town files. So I have to believe that the common driveway is completed. I have a stamped as-built plan from the engineers.
And what is the work that you did on the road?
We didn't, other than to get the state together with the town to ultimately do the whole thing and build it correctly. That was it.
I thought you just said Diamond did.
Oh, we put a water main in, but that didn't, the water main was for the purpose of our project, because we had to bring up a hydrant to have it within so many feet of the houses that we constructed. So it's almost like a byproduct that it happened to be in the roadway, so we just said, we'll make sure that it's paved. And that was it.
But what was the condition, though?
I read the condition.
Yeah, I missed it, so.
That's okay, I'll do it again. Prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall provide the planning board a $10,000 bond, which shall be released upon repaving Cushing Road, satisfactory to the town and the Commonwealth of Mass. After DPW inspects the site and found the cleanup to be complete, these funds shall be returned to the applicant with interest if any is due. And I just, if I can make one more comment, our condition 15, and I understand that they just got the as-built for our driveway. It was actually done back when we built the driveway, but we didn't have the top coat, so we wanted to complete everything. And my condition 15, because I like to adhere to all my conditions, says, as-built plans shall be included with locations of the easements and drainage, swale, all that stuff. It says within 3 months of the completion of the construction of the common driveway. It hasn't even been 3 months. So as soon as Karen asked me for it, we brought it in.
All right, you've made your point.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything? No? All right. Do you have anything? No? Okay. All right.
I think that, you know, to me, and from a layman's, you know, understanding of this, it just sounds like DPW kind of wants to keep you on the hook for potential drainage modification if they go through with street acceptance.
And can I answer through the chair? DPW had no idea who posted surety or if there was any surety. All they said is if there's surety, you can keep the surety. They weren't aware of the condition number. I was told, when I talked to Kevin, he was not aware of condition 8, which it was Diamond's surety for the sole purpose of doing some repaving on the roadway. So, again, it's unusual to require surety if the state is building the road or if the town is doing it. So this is a one-shot deal, and it's only confusing because they didn't finish the whole memo. I mean,
Okay.
Why are we, I thought we were not accepting any more streets in the town.
We're not accepting this.
Well, just the DPW apparently makes it sound like they wanted to.
the state would like the town to accept the
Well,
road. That's got nothing to do with us.
I know, I just, yeah, I
It
just.
has nothing to do with us either with
There's
this.
nothing to do with
us.
what is before you tonight. What
Right.
is before you tonight is you have to decide if the repaving has been completed satisfactorily to the town. We assume it's satisfactory to the Commonwealth since they did it, but
Well, if there's some type of an issue here of back and forth, we're not gonna get involved in it. Is there a motion here, please?
I did not write one, so move to
Moved.
release or not release the surety.
Move to release the surety to Diamond.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ben?
I just, it was for discussion. Was
Okay.
just, should we, when we vote the surety, should we just comment that it does not, like, nothing about us releasing surety as any endorsement over any sort of street acceptance or anything, just to wash ourselves of this mess?
I don't think you need to.
We don't.
All right, you don't need, if you don't think I need to, fine.
It's not really our purview, right?
Right.
Street
The condition
acceptance.
is related to
Unless the permit said it
Well, it
should
talks about
should never
drainage
be
and a
Oh,
common
but
driveway.
that's-
driveway.
No, it
No.
never, I mean, I forwarded you all the permit as well, and
Permit? I'm
I
reading a
don't
special
see where
permit.
it
I
says
read it like
anything, I mean, about that.
too much
The
information.
neighbors fought to keep the tree in the middle of the road and did not want
Well,
the
they
state
can
to
have
take
the
it out.
tree and decorate it for Christmas.
And they can have the road too.
Yes, all right. You all set?
So that was not a condition of the permit.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night. Okay, we now have, getting back to 14 Bayberry Road of Form A. And who would be here for this, please?
For the record, James Garfield, I'm an engineer at Morse Engineering, here tonight representing the applicant for the A&R plan at 14 Bayberry Road. This existing lot resides in the Residence R2 zoning district. It is being divided into 2 lots, Lot 1 and Lot 2. Both of the lots 1 and 2 conform in regards to lot area as well as lot frontage. And it should also be noted that passing perk tests have been performed on both lots 1 and 2 and have been witnessed by the board of health.
Okay.
So with that, I'll pass it to you for any questions.
Karen?
So, this Form A has been submitted under the guise that it's a private way in existence prior to zoning with adequate width graded construction of the road, with the road being 2 to 5% and adequate construction being paved and, you know, suitable for land served around for the purposes of installation of municipal services. So, I mean, the deed said that it was all done in 1935, no hard evidence was presented that it was there, you know, prior to 47, but I do believe it was there. And there are houses already on the road. It has access and frontage, so I believe the board should endorse it.
So how can we run a lot line through an existing house?
I don't know how you run a lot line through an existing house, except that probably the house has to be moved before it can be recorded.
That's correct. On our plan here, we actually note on that existing building to be relocated, and the intent of this filing is to relocate that building within the building envelope of lot line.
And you know.
So, tell me that again, so this can't be recorded until they move the house?
I don't know how that happens. I don't know how they move, I don't know the exact sequence of events here.
Is it, if it's
I mean, I would
recorded,
think-
then you could sell lot 2 versus lot 1, and you could have 2 different owners of the same house.
Well, that's gonna be they're gonna have to figure this out.
That would be ridiculous.
The only comment we got was that they're gonna have to extend the water line. They're gonna have to extend and
Right.
make a water line, you know, to the, I forget the size that the water department said. All the-
Two new 1-inch water services.
No, they have to extend the water line in the street.
Okay, wow.
In the street, all the way down past 6 feet beyond the edge of the last lot,
You're aware of that?
We are.
Yes. Well, we're gonna stay.
I guess, Stevens, I mean, I don't know what the building department, how the building department will handle this. I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario.
But you were talking about recording, so you're talking about going to the registrar.
Yeah,
Yeah, how do you record
I
different lot lines with a house in the middle of it?
I don't know.
Do you guys know?
Me personally, as she said, kind of chicken and the egg. I don't know off the top of my head. We can get that answer for you, for sure.
All right, where does it say on this plan that you're moving the house?
In the house.
It actually says within
It's
the
in the
building.
house, it says
Ah.
right up here.
To be relocated, joy or rapture? Okay. I love these plans, they're wonderful. Any comment? Anybody?
Well,
I was hoping to get an answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going
That's before
to.
we say,
Oh, God, and look who's in the back of the room.
I can't approve something. if
Oh,
we-
I'm so glad.
To try to answer Steve's question, I think you can record the plan at the registry, but the minute you sell one lot off, you create something called infectious invalidity.
Oh,
So they won't transfer it out because it becomes a zoning violation if they don't meet the setbacks for the structure. I think the registry will accept the plan, I believe. You just can't transfer it out. So the chicken just beat the egg.
So, but when you do go to transfer lot 2 or lot 1,
House has to be moved.
how's the registry gonna know that?
It's not a registry issue. The registry doesn't care if you meet zoning or not. They just care about the lines on the plan.
Didn't you just say it was gonna, wait, so, but didn't you just say the moment you transfer it out?
Transfer one or the other.
If you transfer one or the other, it becomes a zoning violation of the town of Scituate. But it doesn't matter, the registry.
Oh, so you're
doesn't
saying
care.
the registry
The
doesn't say
registry
that.
doesn't care.
So you create this infectious invalidity once you transfer one of those lots.
God, that
I don't
sounds
know
like,
anything about infectious invalidity.
and that sounds like a disease.
that sounds like an awful thing, I don't know.
Karen, anything else?
Now, I think you have to endorse the plan.
I agree.
It's got access and frontage. I think you have to endorse the plan.
I'm the landowner, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, I'm here.
Well, I had the same question. Do you have any answer to it?
Well, no, what I do have is basically a plan with the bank that allows us hopefully to transfer it. We obviously can't sell anything unless we transfer it, divide it, and then move forward. I mean, there's no other path that I would see.
How do we?
Well, the other path is to move the house
Move
and
the
then
house.
modify the lots, right?
We wouldn't be able to get I'm sorry, I'm overspeaking, but it's.
You wouldn't be able to get-
We wouldn't move the house and then get a lot, we would be risking
A lot.
significant amount without getting permission from the town. We wouldn't, I don't think we'd get a building permit to move the house. I don't know. It's-
Very good.
It's we would never go down a path without getting permission from the town to do this first.
Well, we're saying, what you're asking for is for us to recognize that you don't need our permission. That's what you're asking for tonight.
I'm sorry.
They,
Approval not required.
right, it's
Right.
approval not required for, in terms it's not a subdivision.
Right.
They may need other permits from you. They will likely need a stormwater permit for both lots.
Yeah, but we're not talking about any of that right
No, we're
now.
not.
We're just talking about the A and
We're
R.
just talking about the A and R tonight.
Right.
Okay. All right. Are we ready? We're ready. I move to endorse as approval not required a plan of land in Scituate, Massachusetts, 14 Bayberry Road, Assessors Parcel 5-2-13F, stamped by Jason Scott, PLS of Morse Engineering Company, Inc., for applicant owner Amy and John Barron, dated June 7th, 2021, as the division of the tract of land shown on the accompanying plan is not a subdivision because Bayberry Road is a private way, that it was in existence on the date the subdivision control law became effective in the town of Scituate, and the planning board determines that it has sufficient width, suitable grades at 2 to 5%, and adequate construction, being a paved asphalt road to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use of the land abutting thereon or served thereby, and for the installation of municipal services to serve such land and building erected or to be erected thereon. Planning board endorsement of this plan is not a determination as to conformance with zoning regulations. Is there a second? Don't everyone speak at once.
Second, that's not my job, huh?
All in favor?
It's,
Yeah.
wow.
Okay, people.
I'm sorry, who said aye?
Sure, let me know.
Then
That's it.
we have one aye.
Haven't finished.
So it's
Go ahead.
not endorsed.
What's the issue?
Moving the house.
Moving the house. It's approval not required, it's an A and R. We can stamp,
We have to say yes.
yes, I.
Yes. Aye.
Aye.
One nay.
Nay.
Okay,
4-1.
4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go back and move the house.
Nice to see you.
Okay.
Aye. So this is another, this is a perfect example of zoning.
And grease. All right.
I know, it's really, no, it's so, this is up the street, for me, this happened on that beautiful, on the Hall property down here. What I really would have liked to ask you is, how much water do you have on Bayberry Lane as of 11:30 last night? It must come right up to
They're all gonna be underwater.
So, but I think the thing is, if this said house raised, we wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah, if the house moving is different.
So we've just never seen it, I believe,
Oh, we're gonna see a lot more stuff like this.
right? Because don't we see plans all the time that says house raised,
Yeah.
Yeah, house to be raised.
house to be raised, and then you don't
Whatever.
really think about it, right? Although
Who was
it's
the
weird,
woman that
it's
was
not
sitting
really
there?
ever been in the
I don't think I've
line.
ever seen a lot line
Yeah, I
through
never
a
seen it
house.
through the
That goes to
middle
a
of
house.
construction.
I think there are
Nope.
people who live on the lane. Somebody called me this afternoon.
Yeah.
So
I asked if there were any comments.
No, I don't think that there is. I think people down there in particular, it's a beautiful little street that, as we know, it's being encroached. And I think this is actually the last open parcel on that lane.
I don't, you know,
No,
if,
it's not.
Huh?
if it hadn't gone right through the house, I would have been,
Yeah.
it would have been fine for me. I don't get it, how you can divide a lot through the middle of a house.
Well, okay.
I think
And I don't know anything about what Steve was talking about, so I have no way of validating that one way or the
Awful thing to
other.
have an
I think
infectious
that- I think what
invalidity.
he's- I think what he stated is probably true.
It is true.
Once you start transferring the property with the house in the middle of it, you would create a problem.
Big time.
And no one would give you, I mean, unless you paid for cash, you would never, it's just a bad idea.
Yeah,
But you would never get a mortgage on either of these pieces of property with this house sitting here.
yeah. Well, he did say that.
And no lawyer would
Yeah,
represent.
it just feels like what they're doing is they're creating a situation that the registry will be completely different than what's on the ground.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
they have a right to divide their property.
Yep, anyone
What
they want.
happens after that, who knows? Maybe they won't do it. Maybe they'll find out it doesn't work. Maybe they'll be back.
Yeah.
This will also be a good one for the assessor to figure out.
Yeah,
How they're
really.
gonna tax those two parcels with
Yeah.
part of a house in one section.
I guess they're gonna prorate it by square footage. Or
All right.
pick the prettiest side.
All right, can we move on to approved minutes,
Oh, yeah.
please?
I move to approve the meeting minutes for June 10th, 2021.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Counting.
I'm abstaining, I was not there.
I move to approve the requisition of $23.86 to Amazon for office supplies, for $2,836.50 to Harriman Associates for consultation on the master plan, for $124.32 to Gates House Media for legal ad for 143 Border Street, for $126 to Gatehouse Media for legal ad for 43 Watch Hill Drive, for $27.32 to WB Mason for office supplies, for $169.07 to Karen Joseph for mileage.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Future meetings.
Right, so, right now, the way the legislation is, it has to be either all in person or all remote. We don't have the capabilities to do a full hybrid model. So, does the board want to be all in person for the month that, well, maybe we can do it, for a month of July or from here on out? We need to decide that, and we need to decide if we're gonna continue at 6:30.
First of all, from what I read from the town administrator, that it's up to the chair to decide if we are remote or if we are in person. But I will listen to the board. I would prefer that we do in person. I much prefer that. But I am only one of many.
I'm okay to do it in person. It's
I
okay with
am
me
as well.
at this point.
I'm fine in person.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in person is just a higher quality meeting for
Yes.
the work that we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
It's a great
I think
way
it
to put
creates,
that, yeah.
with all of us, it's harder, so sometimes any one of us might have more conflicts on a given evening.
Right.
It would be nice if you had that, you could remotely participate.
Right, well, maybe someday.
But you
You
know
know?
what, actually, I think they are working on something.
Yeah, we
They are
just
trying
don't
to
have-
work on something.
yeah, we don't have the technology in the town. Yeah, I think that's what he said, yeah. They were
But
supposed
we all
to
have to
be,
be
yeah.
here or not at all, so.
And then the last thing would just be from, what all this stems from, which is like from public health and personal health preservation perspective. I mean, I'm okay with it. I've been vaccinated. And I
We're all
think
vaccinated.
As long as we are,
Mm.
everyone, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable.
Nope.
No.
On that perspective.
Well,
Maybe we'll
and don't
have a
bring in
meeting.
the Delta variant, we don't need it. Thank you very
All
much.
right, so do we want to keep 6:30?
I would
That
prefer,
works for, I
That
guess,
probably works for the summer for me.
Yeah.
I can't, once we get to after Labor Day, I might have to go back to 7.
All
well,
right, so we'll stay
Cross that
6:30
bridge.
through
Yeah,
the
we'll do
summer,
that too,
and
yeah.
then we'll revisit at the end of August.
right, okay.
And our next meeting is
I
when?
think July 8th, then
July
July 22nd.
my birthday.
Okay. And July 8th, we're going to come up with from everybody next step, what we'd like to see.
Priorities.
Priorities moving forward.
Yes.
Yes.
And priorities moving forward, and I want to talk a little bit more about the lot shape bylaw.
Yes,
Yep.
please.
Yeah.
Yep,
And I want to talk about stormwater that night.
fine, excellent.
Get my rat tail on really quickly.
So,
Your rat tail, stop it. Okay.
Ann had asked me, last time she asked all of us to give out 3 things, and as we approved that last accessory dwelling, I mean, that's a whole house.
It was a house.
And so, I think one of the things I'd like to talk about, and I know it's been shot down before, is reducing the size of an accessory dwelling, because if you look down the road and we're gonna do accessory dwellings for these McMansions, they're gonna be bigger than our houses. It's, I mean.
But
if you-
it did fit within the bylaw, though, I mean.
But like I said, it just, but if you go down to.
Mine's skin of its teeth, but
Yeah.
it's still the skin
But
of
that's
its
just
teeth.
it, but if you look at what we are approving now for houses, what they're building now, and they're gonna come to us as an accessory dwelling, that could be a big house.
But,
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
We'll
Like I
talk
said,
about
the thing is, it's gonna look
Well, actually, I have,
odd next to, in some ways, having you have it a certain proportion, so then it's somewhat even.
Well, like I said, just to open up
If
for
it's one big
conversation.
house and then
Yes,
it's
but-
a 900 square foot house, it's gonna look.
It would be clearly subordinate.
yes, it would be. Okay. All right, liaison reports. Anybody have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay,
Sorry.
I went to CPC. Things have to be in applications by the 1st of July, which is next week. There was a little bit of a back and forth because Scituate Little League wants another field, another 90-foot field, which is a regulation baseball field, and where are they gonna put it, and da-da-da-da-da. So, that was interesting, and I went to.
So did they come in with a proposed location?
No, they did not. But keep in mind that Toll Brothers has given the town $400,000 to build a field. Now, there had been talk about putting it behind the old Gates School. So I don't know if that's gonna happen, but this is.
Behind the old Gate School.
Yeah.
There was a field there now.
Is it
Field,
baseball?
they
There
still
is.
use that.
There's a baseball field.
There's a
there.
baseball field,
Regulation.
but it's not regulation. What
Yeah.
they're looking for is another,
Soccer
Todd soccer.
was there.
and there's a soccer field. So, that's, it was a letter to the selectmen, but it was sent to Dan Fenley, who's really into baseball. All right, and then I went to, traffic rules, and one of the issues that came up came from the zoning board of appeals trying to figure out or ask traffic rules about overnight parking on Cole Parkway. Because as you know, one of the condos down there, they're above Goodies 124 Front Street, has no parking. And so they want residential stickers, which could open a whole can of worms.
Oh, God, no.
And that is not within the scope of traffic rules and regulations. So the can has been kicked up the road to the Board of Selectmen, but I think it's really a bad idea. And unfortunately, there is overnight parking, but it's where it floods. So. And once upon a time, they were allowed to park in the Welsh Company parking lot, but when it all changed hands and somebody else came along, they were said, no, it was a handshake. And handshakes, as we know, don't last forever. So there's an issue down there, but it's not up to, they said something about, maybe we need to talk to the planning board. No.
Well, actually, when that discussion was before zoning, they had kicked that up to the Board of Selectmen.
Right. Well, and they also kicked it over to traffic rules.
Yeah.
So we're kicking it up to the selectmen. It's public parking. That's what it is.
How do you buy a house and not have parking?
Well, that is also a good question.
You ever lived in the city?
No, it's
Oh, well, I have, but I
condos.
mean, we're not in the city, I mean,
Yeah,
that's.
it's
what
like a
that is.
three-story
No,
condo.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say
Front
it's a
Street.
condo, I thought it was
Yeah.
just apartments.
No.
Yeah.
They used to be apartments,
Yeah.
and then the Warners turned them into condominiums, and that place all but burned to the ground a number of years ago. And fortunately, because they were reconstructing Front Street, they managed to turn the water back on before the fire. Otherwise, the whole thing would have gone. Anyway, so that's all I have to report. Anybody else?
Well, I think it's interesting that, I think there are 2 people stepping down from zoning, so we're gonna be really interested to see how the face of that changes. In a public meeting, zoning publicly said, we never turned down anything. So I think that will be a really interesting thing to watch as far as density goes and in building. They just kind of stamp everything, so I'll be interested to see who throws their hat in the ring for that. And the other one I think that we're going to be aware of at some point is the executive session held by the Board of Selection, the Select Board, excuse me, about Lions Head in the east side of Border Street. So I personally got probably a dozen phone calls and emails about why wasn't the planning board involved in that. And then I got a canned letter from a group of concerned citizens to send on to the Board of Selectmen, and I sent it on to 3, and I got 2 responses, which I was surprised at, glad to see. And it tried to explain to people about an executive session, and to a person, they all said to me, that means something bad is happening.
No.
I know that, and I know that, and I understand
We
that.
have a letter.
Yeah.
And we have a letter. It has not been put on the agenda yet. When it's time to put it on the agenda, the planning board will get their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Okay, we have a letter, but I've been told it's not a bona fide offer.
And I can tell you why.
So that's why it's not on your agenda yet.
Well, like I said, they just, I think people get confused about how stuff goes to where, and why was it going to the Board of Selectmen? That was the.
Because they're the people who have to decide.
I told them that, so, but like I said, it's all this whole thing about, and open meeting law is very confusing to people who do not deal with open meeting law.
Right, and we will put it on the agenda for a recommendation
When it
when
comes
the
to us.
time is right.
That's all, like I said, it's just one of those, the people are paying attention. I think people think that the kind of stuff that just really kind of filters right up to the top, and that's one of them.
All right. Anything else? All right, Karen, planning and development?
So I sent you, in your folders, you'll see you have the latest DRT report. That is just so you understand where we are. You know, I conduct those meetings once a month. So hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll just ask me on that. Somebody mentioned the Countryway sidewalk. Countryway sidewalk has started, and my understanding is that it will be coming down and meeting up with the sidewalk already existing on Old Countryway.
Perfect.
Are they gonna put a sidewalk down Hatherley Road?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, to where?
Down there?
On Hatherley Road.
I mean,
It
where?
ends right after Toll Brothers right now. That's where it stopped.
All the way down, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
That's not a discussion.
I've been told the next priority is Stockbridge Road.
Is what?
Stockbridge.
But that's all I know. We have collected $85,000 for our pedestrian fund and traffic improvements, and so the $400,000 that they got for the Countryway might not be enough. Then we may have to have a vote on that to use some of that, or it might be used for a future, project further on. So I sent you stuff about lot shape, which I'd like everyone to look at.
I was confused.
And let's see, I'm likely to have a pre-construction conference for 4852 New Driftway, July 7th or 8th. As soon as they get their stuff recorded and get their surety and their other stuff into me, then I'll have a pre-construction conference. 18 Ford is moving along, half the foundation is in.
Is there another proposal on Ford Place coming in?
Walter Sullivan's nonsense.
Not that I've seen
No.
yet. Then Drew Company had a little blowout this week from the storm. It was addressed immediately. It was fixed by 6 o'clock, and the next day, before I even got to work, I had the SWIP report, and I had, the pictures of all, the machinery repairing it. I have pictures of everything, so everything has been totally fixed there, and they're looking at how they're going to be addressing stuff in the future. I mean, the site was all graded in, but we had a phenomenal amount of rain. In a
Sure
very
did,
short
2 inches.
amount of time. Seaside at Scituate, that was a little different story.
Always is.
I
That should have been
have a meeting
the
set up.
regular detention basin. I mean, why did they have a breakout?
Who, Drew?
No,
Seaside?
Seaside, yeah.
Well, because there's no, all right,
Because the system's supposed to be designed to handle it, right?
correct. The
Yeah.
system is supposed to be designed to handle it. I think there's several issues going on, and I've scheduled a meeting for next Wednesday with Toll Brothers, and DPW will be there, Conservation will be there. I think you have your construction issues, and I think that there's a question of permanent issues. They don't think there's a question of permanent issues. I question if there's no real stormwater controls on the east side of Hatherley Road. Everything's all on the west side of Hatherley Road. And so I question if the rate and volume is not then increased. I mean, anybody wants to see any of the videos, the movies I was sent, the pictures I was sent, I have a lot, but there's a lot of water going into some backyards on 7th Ave that the people claim they never had before. Toll Brothers said they came to them immediately before construction started and said they, had water. So, I
What do you
don't know.
believe?
I know the pictures show silty water, and so where did the silty water came from? Obviously, the silty water came from
Somewhere.
construction site.
From the construction site.
So, we're.
Did they have erosion controls in place?
There were silt docks and silt fences in place. There was a sediment trap in place, which was put in after the disaster in February. When the stuff down below gets full, it gets pumped up. And the big basin, the working construction basin by the clubhouse was quite full. I was told that it did not overtop, but everything gets pumped into there and then goes down through the swell and everything. So they understand that, and they are working to address the situation, and they will have several things done before next Wednesday, and then we'll be discussing other things next Wednesday. They understand, I expressed that this should not be happening in this stage of a project.
No, it should
And
not.
they understood. They understood. So I'm working on it, and, if one person wants to come to sit in on the meeting, I don't have a problem.
How far along are they, Karen? Are they like that upper right portion, the last one behind Wapachex Scituate, are they done with?
No, nothing's been started up there, but they're moving along. All the homes, I think, on Benjamin Way have all been started. So pretty much they don't have a sales office anymore. They took the sales office
Really?
out.
Somebody's living
The
there.
clubhouse has a temporary occupancy permit. Most of the ones, there's a couple close to completing construction at the end of Lower Zan. They're still working on Diane Terrace, and then over in the far corner by Wampatuck.
Have they
But
sold, how many have they sold? Do we know?
I didn't look at the latest map. I didn't look at.
Is the pool open?
The clubhouse is a temporary occupancy permit. I saw somebody swimming in the pool.
Well, I guess it's open.
So I assume that the pool passed all the tests.
Okay, great. So.
Well, I would join you, but I'm not even gonna be in the city or in town on that day, so.
I can go carry.
I would be interested in knowing whether we think this is a design flaw or not, though, obviously.
I spoke with our consulting engineers, and our consulting engineers will be at this meeting as well.
Oh, well, that's good.
I mean, and so, Mr. Buckley does not believe it's a design flaw. He believes it's all construction issues.
See an engineer.
So,
But just remind him that that in and of itself is a design flaw because he's not allowed to pollute during construction.
Right.
So he has been reminded of that, and so, I mean, we're working to resolve the issues, is what I can report to
Yeah.
you right now.
On
I
that
appreciate
topic,
that.
like, I understand we have our, as a town, we're working with them, we have our town issues, but like, this scope of this project is entirely, like, they have a NIPD's permit for this, right? At the
Yeah.
federal level? So at what point is there any sort of incident reporting or monitoring that's going back to these federal or state agencies that, like, because I to be honest, I can't see on their picture of the stormwater with the silt going into the ocean. Like, that's abhorrent.
Completely insane.
And
right?
like, I'll contact somebody at the feds if I have to, but I
What did
can't.
Amy have to say
I
about
can't.
it?
I can't see that anymore. I mean, I go
Yeah.
fishing and lobstering and take the
Yeah.
kids to the beach. Like, it's terrible. And I think
I
a
get
publicly
their-
traded company needs to be held
I get their SWIP
accountable.
reports, I get their SWIP reports every time. When I went out on Wednesday, I reminded them that the SWIP report is due they have to do the SWIP report within 24 hours of this event. I have not seen the SWIP report. I indicated to them that the SWIP report better not say that there's no rills and erosion things, because I have pictures of them.
Right.
So, that's what I can say. I don't have their SWIP report yet for the storm.
And,
But I get I have a stack, I have a printed stack, and I stopped printing them, but I have a computer of
Right.
all the SWIP reports.
Right. Okay.
I don't know where they all go, but I know I get them as required in the decision.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, like, if we're,
Overlooking
this is like it's a big corporation we're dealing with, and I'm wondering at what point we bring in a little more leverage if our needs as a town aren't being met in terms of environmental protection. That's all I'm getting at.
well, $300 fine ain't gonna do it.
That's
No,
my
that's
kind of
that's
my point.
coffee money to them.
Conservation is going to be fining them as well.
So it
That's-
goes up to
that's
400?
lunch.
I mean, to these guys, that doesn't
That's-
even matter.
That's chump change to
Right.
them.
I understand that, and,
Can we fine them $300 a day?
all right, but I know silty water is going off-site at the moment.
But we just still don't have a report?
I thought it was going into the neighbors' yards.
That too.
On that particular day.
Oh. Yeah.
But like also, I mean, I would think that I drove down there, okay, right after the peak of the storm, and it looked like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory river, okay? Yeah, and
It was. I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, at some point too, the town, I mean, I think this is entirely in DPW's purview as well to backs up on this. Like, we have like MS4 permitting as a town, and I guarantee a lot of the storm drains and stuff that's going into it is town infrastructure, and that's going into the water or the wetland somewhere, and that's now we're it's joint liability, I'm sure, so we're partly liable for that as a town under the MS4 stuff. So I mean, I don't know, I see this as they just gotta get this sorted out, and it doesn't seem like they really
It'll
care,
kill.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but it
no,
doesn't
I
seem
agree
that
with
way
you.
to me.
Well, what, I mean, you know, I guess the question is, what are the responsibilities and/or the remedies that have to happen here? I mean, do we have an obligation to do something for the water that drained into the town? Stormwater
They're
system?
cleaning, they have been directed to clean the catch basins in Haverly Road, 6th Ave, and 7th Ave. And likewise, I directed Drew to clean the catch basin at the corner of Old Driftway and New Driftway, because that's where sediment, that's where silty water went. So they have been directed.
Did they do it?
Yes.
They
Drew
cleaned
did
it.
True.
I just
No, I mean, I'm talking about
Toll Brothers, I
Toll
told
Brothers.
them today.
Yeah.
I also asked them today, I said, I would like you to give me progress reports of where you are before Wednesday, because that goes a long way. I mean, don't just tell me you're going to re-tackify and reseed the area behind some of the single family and the duplexes. If you shoot me an email that says, this is what we accomplished today towards that goal, it goes a lot further. I've asked for that.
Do you think that they need to come before us again? We could ask them to come to see us again to
I think that we need to have our meeting first.
okay.
Okay.
I mean, and then you can ask things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
you
I'll
know-
just contact.
And like I said, and the other
Yeah.
issue is, I mean, I know it's, I know
Yeah,
that,
that's right.
I know that for them,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's an inconvenience, but, well, that's the cost of doing business.
That's
It's-
right.
If it's a little inconvenient, we're sorry for you, but you're doing something that this board doesn't really approve of, so you need to be responsible to somebody.
And I mean, as soon as I started getting phone calls on Tuesday now, I tried to call Mr. Buckley, I didn't get an answer. I tried to call Mr. Maselli, I didn't get an answer. But then I did get emails back from the site guy. So, I mean, and the site guy said, we're going to get some pumps. You know, we're doing things. I mean, but, so, it's not like there was zero communication.
Well, there's supposed to be theoretically very heavy rain tonight coming in.
Yeah.
I don't think it's heavy.
No, I don't think like Tuesday.
Do you have anything else, my dear? Okay.
What about this email you sent out on the senior center? Is there anything we need to do with that?
Not at the moment, I don't believe. I know that the traffic monitoring is supposed to start August 1st. They're still working on the lighting stuff, and they're still working on the noise stuff. That's what was reported at DRT the other day, so I think we have to let them do their work.
And any idea what that entails?
They were waiting for a report to come back on the noise. I mean, they go up there and check the stuff all the time, is what I'm told. The lighting, they were
Here
doing.
from the street.
They were doing the testing, and they're trying to find a way now to dim the building lights, is what I was told.
I looked at it. I don't know.
I'm really interested in what that entails. They're thinking hard.
Or hardly thinking.
I just have a question if it's a kind of an open discussion on the topic of noise. Are you aware of anything for like single family home construction? Is there anything in the general bylaws or anything?
There is nothing in the general bylaws. We do not control, we do not have noise.
There's a state
ordinance.
noise.
Is there?
Yeah, sure.
They have to abide by, there are DEP noise
Sure,
standards.
right.
Yep. And part of it includes a discussion about whether it's a nuisance or not. I'm trying to remember the exact language. I'll dig it out and see if I can find them.
Is it near your house?
It's in my mom's neighborhood. You hear it in mine though. That's South Indian Trail over there.
What are you doing?
It's a whole ram on a excavator.
Is it on Gardner Road?
They blast their